A fierce blizzard sweeps through Cedar Hollow. Inside a buried cabin beneath an old bridge, a mother and child, trapped, freezing, fading fast. A wandering girl discovers them and runs through the storm for help. Through the whiteout, a lone officer and his German shepherd appear. That night, between snow and silence, a miracle begins. If this story warms your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to receive notifications for more stories of love, faith, and hope. The storm had swallowed Cedar Hollow whole. Snow fell like shards of glass, driven sideways by a wind that screamed through the valley, turning trees into ghosts and the frozen river into a road of white fire. Sophie Lane pulled her thin coat tighter. She was 12, small for her age, with hair the color of chestnuts matted beneath a wool cap too large for her. Her cheeks were raw and red, her hands numb inside torn gloves. For 3 nights she had slept in the shell of an abandoned shed near the railway, eating what little she could find from the town's dumpsters. But tonight, hunger wasn't what gnawed at her. It was the sound. A faint cry, barely human, carried on the wind beneath the bridge. She crept down the embankment, her boots sliding on the ice. The world below the bridge was a labyrinth of snow and twisted roots. In the hollow beneath, half buried by drift, she saw a small wooden cabin. Its roof caved in, one window shattered. Smoke no longer rose from the crooked chimney. Pushing the door open, Sophie gagged at the smell of burnt wood and frozen air. Inside, by the faint glow of a dying lantern, lay a woman and a little girl. The woman's hair, a tangled river of auburn, clung to her pale face. Her hands were blistered, lips blue. Beside her, the child couldn't have been older than 5, curled beneath a threadbare blanket. Sophie knelt beside them. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her voice cracked in the cold. The woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes green as thawing ice. "Emily," she whispered. My daughter." Sophie tore the scarf from her neck, wrapping it around the woman's bleeding arm. "You're hurt." "I tried to light the stove," the woman murmured. Smoke filled the room. "I thought—" She coughed, a thin sound that faded quickly. Sophie looked around. The matches were soaked, the air sharp with frost. She pressed her ear to the woman's chest, felt a faint rhythm. The girl, Emily, barely breathed. She had to get help. Sophie stood, every part of her screaming in protest. "I'll come back," she said, though she didn't know if they'd still be alive when she did. She grabbed her old backpack, now nearly empty, and stumbled out into the storm. The wind met her like a living thing, pushing, clawing. But she kept moving, because if she stopped, they'd die. Miles away, headlights cut through the curtain of white. Officer Cole Merritt leaned forward over the wheel, eyes squinting into the blizzard. He was in his 40s, tall and broad-shouldered with a jawline that seemed carved from stone. A short beard, peppered with gray, lined his face, the kind that spoke of sleepless nights and unhealed regrets. Cole had seen too much in 15 years of service. Car wrecks, domestic calls gone wrong, and once a fire that had taken a family he couldn't save. Since then, he carried silence like a companion, and duty like a wound that never closed. Beside him, in the passenger seat, sat Atlas, a 6-year-old German shepherd with fur the color of steel and eyes the color of amber whiskey. The dog was massive, calm but alert, trained for search and rescue. Cole trusted him more than any human partner he'd ever had. "Visibility 0, Cole muttered. "We're turning back after this mile, boy." Atlas huffed softly, fogging the window. Then his ears twitched. He turned sharply toward the right. "What is it?" Cole slowed the cruiser. Through the snow, a figure appeared, small, staggering, clutching a backpack like a lifeline. Sophie collapsed against the hood of the patrol car, her face chalk white, eyes glassy with frost. Cole was out of the car before it stopped moving. Hey, hey, easy now. He caught her as she fell forward. Her body was weightless, trembling. What happened? Where are your parents? Under bridge. Her voice was barely a whisper. A cabin? 2 people. A little girl. She gasped. They're dying. Cole felt the words like ice in his blood. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. Stay with me, kid. You did good. Atlas barked once, sharp and urgent, the signal for distress confirmed. Cole met the dog's eyes and nodded. Show me. Atlas leapt ahead, nose to the wind, and Cole followed, carrying Sophie's fading scent of fear and determination with him. They found the bridge minutes later. Beneath it, the storm swirled like a living ghost. Cole slid down the embankment, boots sinking deep in snow. The cabin's door hung ajar, banging softly in the wind. Inside, Leah Moore and little Emily lay exactly as Sophie had left them. Cole knelt beside the woman. Her pulse was weak but steady. He lifted the child, light as a breath, and wrapped her in his coat. Atlas moved with precision, sniffing the perimeter, tail rigid, a guardian reborn. When Leah stirred, her voice came out hoarse. Who are you? Officer Merritt, he said gently. You're safe now. Leah's eyes widened, as if the word safe was something she hadn't heard in years. As Cole carried Emily out into the white abyss, Sophie stood on the ridge above, watching, her hair whipping like a banner of defiance. She'd done it, but deep down, something in Cole's chest tightened. He didn't yet know who Leah Moore was or what shadow followed her. And somewhere behind the storm, fate was waiting. Quiet, patient, and cold as the snow. Snow hammered the world into silence. The wind clawed at Cole Merritt's coat as he carried the unconscious child through the storm, each step sinking into the whiteness like he was wading through time itself. Atlas moved beside him, head low, his thick fur matted with frost. The German shepherd was breathing hard but steady, eyes focused on the faint beam of the cruiser's headlights ahead. Behind them, Leah Moore stumbled, clutching her side, refusing to fall even as the cold turned her breath into shards of glass. Cole opened the rear door, laying the child gently across the seat, then turned back toward the woman. You need to sit, he said, his tone clipped but not unkind. Leah shook her head. Emily first. Her voice cracked, dry as the air. She hasn't moved since last night. She's alive, Cole replied, pressing 2 fingers against the child's throat. Weak pulse, but it's there. He wrapped a thermal blanket around both of them, then reached for his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 3 to 12. I have 2 victims, female adults, 1 minor, both showing signs of hypothermia and smoke inhalation. Requesting immediate medical evac near mile marker 18, under the South Bridge. The radio hissed, sputtered, then steadied. A voice came through, calm, deep, and unmistakably authoritative. Copy that, 3 to 12. Name of the adult female? Cole hesitated. He pulled a wallet from the woman's torn jacket, brushing away frost. The name on the water-stained ID hit him like a quiet explosion. Leah Moore. He'd seen that name before, 2 years ago, buried in an internal bulletin labeled Class C Fugitive, High-Risk Whistleblower. He looked back at her, really looked this time. Beneath the dirt and exhaustion, her features were striking. High cheekbones, narrow jaw, freckles faded by the cold. She met his gaze with wary intelligence, like someone used to being hunted. Repeat the name, 3 to 12, the dispatcher urged. Before Cole could speak, another voice cut in. Lower, rougher, carrying the kind of authority that came from habit, not respect. This is Sheriff Dalton Price. Merritt, you hold your position. Do not engage further. Cole froze. He hadn't heard the sheriff's voice in weeks, but he knew it immediately. Dalton Price was a man built of iron and smoke, broad, thick-necked, with hair slicked back and a mustache that couldn't hide the perpetual sneer underneath. A former oil rig foreman turned lawman, Price ruled Cedar Hollow with a mix of charm and menace. He believed in order above justice, and in his eyes, Leah Moore was a stain on that order. "Sheriff," Cole said carefully, "I have 2 survivors, both in critical condition. I'm bringing them in." "Negative," Price snapped. "Hold them until my arrival. That woman is under active warrant. You'll keep your distance until I say otherwise." The static hissed like the storm outside. Cole looked through the window. Leah was holding Emily close, whispering something into the child's hair. The sight twisted something inside him. "Sir," he said slowly, "they won't make it another hour out here." Silence. Then Price's voice again, colder this time. "That's an order, Merritt. Stand down." Cole's thumb hovered over the radio. He thought of all the times he'd obeyed orders that didn't sit right, the times someone innocent had paid the price for bureaucracy. He thought of the fire 2 winters ago, of the faces he couldn't save because he'd waited for permission that never came. He turned the dial, killing the channel. The world became mercifully quiet again, except for the wind and the sound of Atlas breathing beside him. The dog looked up, eyes steady, waiting. "You heard him," Cole muttered half to himself. "We're supposed to wait." Atlas tilted his head, gave a low rumble deep in his chest, a sound that always meant no. Cole exhaled, a slow fog of defiance. "Yeah," he whispered. "Me neither." He reached for the ignition. The cruiser rumbled to life, the heat struggling to cut through the frozen air. Leah stirred. "You're disobeying him," she said weakly. Cole didn't answer. "You shouldn't," she added, though her tone carried no conviction. "I'm not worth it." He turned to her, jaw tight. "Lady, I decide who's worth it." She looked at him for a long moment, studying him as though she recognized the kind of man who carried ghosts. Then she closed her eyes and leaned back, her lips forming silent words that might have been prayer. Atlas shifted closer to the heater vent, his ears twitching. As the cruiser cut through the storm, Cole couldn't shake the image of Leah's eyes. There was guilt there, but not the kind born of crime. Something deeper, heavier. He'd seen it once before, in the mirror. The road narrowed into a forest corridor, trees bent under the snow. Ahead, faint light flickered. A roadside cabin, half buried, a remnant of the old ranger station. Cole parked, stepped out, and opened the back door. "We can't risk the drive to town yet," he said. "We'll shelter here until the road's clear." He carried Emily inside, laying her on a cot near a wood stove. The room smelled of dust and iron. Atlas paced a slow circle before sitting near the entrance, silent and watchful. Leah followed, one hand on the wall for balance. "You shouldn't have come back here," she murmured. "This road's been closed since the flood last spring." "Guess I didn't get the memo," Cole said. "Or maybe I just stopped listening." He threw wood into the stove, sparks leaping into the air. "We'll warm up here. You'll tell me what happened when you can stand." "And if I don't?" she asked. Cole looked up from the fire. "Then we sit in silence. I'm good at that." Outside, the wind screamed across the pines, but inside the heat began to thaw, the edges of the cold. Leah sat on the cot beside her daughter, brushing the child's hair with trembling fingers. "You've got a kind dog," she said softly. "He's not kind," Cole replied. "He's loyal. There's a difference." She smiled faintly. "Maybe both." Cole checked his watch. "If the sheriff's on his way, we'll have company by morning." "You don't trust him," Leah said, watching the flames dance. "I don't trust anyone who enjoys being obeyed," Cole muttered. He poured her a cup of water from his canteen. "Drink. You're dehydrated." She accepted it, hands shaking. "You know who I am," she said suddenly. "You've seen my file." "Yeah," he admitted, "and I don't care." "You should," Leah said. "People died because of me." Cole's gaze was steady. "People die because of a lot of things. Doesn't mean the wrong people are to blame." Leah stared at him, a man carved from resolve and regret, sitting in a flicker of firelight with a dog at his side. For the first time in years, she felt the faint warmth of safety, and it terrified her more than the cold. Emily stirred, murmuring something in her sleep. Leah bent down, pressing her forehead against the girl's. "She's all I have left," she whispered. Cole didn't respond. He knew what it was like to lose everything left. Outside, the storm began to ease, the sky bruising into the first pale shade of dawn. Cole leaned against the window frame, scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, Dalton Price was coming, and with him the kind of trouble that left no witnesses. He looked down at Atlas, who had raised his head, ears forward, muscles coiled beneath his coat. "We'll be ready, boy," Cole said quietly. Atlas gave a low, almost human sigh, as if to agree. Cole turned to the fire again. Leah's eyes met his across the orange glow, tired but alive. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "Because I couldn't help someone else," he said simply. And for a brief, unguarded moment, she understood. This wasn't a rescue out of duty, but redemption. In the silence that followed, Atlas lowered his head onto his paws, and the last of the snow outside the cabin began to fall slower, softer, as if even the storm itself was holding its breath. The forest loomed like a cathedral of shadows, each pine bowing beneath the weight of the storm's aftermath. Snow clung to every branch, muting the world into silence except for the soft growl of the cruiser's engine. Cole Merritt drove with one hand tight on the wheel, his jaw tense beneath the stubble lining it. The headlights cut through the fog like weak prayers, and behind him, Leah Moore sat with her daughter wrapped in a blanket, her face ghost-pale in the dim light. Atlas rested in the back, his great frame still and alert, eyes glowing faintly amber as he watched the road ahead. Leah's lips were bloodless. "Where are you taking us?" she asked, her voice rough but steady. "A place that won't ask questions," Cole said, not looking back. He wasn't sure why he trusted his own answer. "Old Ranger's Post. No one's been there in years." "You know this road?" "I used to," he muttered, "before the fire." That word, fire, hung between them like a ghost neither dared name. After an hour, the forest thickened. The road narrowed into what used to be a logging trail. Finally, the headlights caught the outline of a cabin. 2 stories, timber darkened by time, roof bowed under snow. Its chimney stood cracked but smoke-stained, as if it once lived 100 winters before this one. Cole parked and stepped into the biting cold. "Stay here," he said. Atlas jumped out beside him anyway, shaking the snow from his thick coat. The German shepherd's posture was rigid, scanning the tree line with a soldier's instinct. His breath puffed clouds into the night air. "Still got your edge, huh?" Cole said softly. Atlas wagged his tail once, but didn't relax. The forest made him uneasy, and that was enough to make Cole's skin crawl, too. Inside, the air was stale, dust, wood ash, and the faint trace of old varnish. The cabin's main room was wide, with a stone fireplace blackened by age. On one wall hung an array of rusted dog collars, each engraved with a name: Scout, Daisy, Rex, Coda. Leah entered behind him, carrying Emily in her arms. Her boots left small, wet impressions on the wood floor. "Whose place is this?" she whispered. "Tom Vance's," Cole answered, lighting a kerosene lamp. He was a rescue ranger, used to pull dogs out of blizzards, train them to find missing people. "Used to?" "He died 15 years ago," Cole said, his voice low. "Heart failure, alone in this cabin, but he left it open. Said the door should always stay unlocked for whoever needed it." Leah looked around, her gaze softening. "He must have been kind." Cole nodded. "He was one of the good ones." The warmth of the lamp brought color back to Leah's face. She placed Emily near the hearth and wrapped her tighter in blankets. Cole fed the fireplace with dry logs from an old stack by the wall. The wood caught quickly, flames curling up the chimney in a spiral of orange light. As he stood, something caught his eye, a large wooden clock on the far wall. Its pendulum was broken, its carved bird forever frozen mid-song. Beneath the clock, on a brass plate, was a name: Arthur Hale. Leah froze where she stood. "Did you say Arthur Hale?" she asked quietly. "That was the craftsman," Cole said. "He made the clock for Vance. You know him." Leah swallowed hard. Arthur Hale was the father of someone who died because of me. Cole turned to face her fully for the first time since they'd arrived. "Because of you?" he repeated. Leah sank into the nearest chair, the shadows of the fire painting tired hollows beneath her eyes. "I was a veterinarian for North Gene Labs," she said. "They were testing neural stimulants on rescue dogs, trying to enhance obedience. They said it was for safety, but the animals screamed like people, Cole. One of the engineers, Daniel Hale, tried to stop it. The facility caught fire during the protest. He didn't make it out. Arthur, his father, blamed me for starting it." Cole stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Atlas shifted, resting his head on Leah's knee, his amber eyes calm, forgiving. Leah blinked in disbelief, as if the dog understood what no one else ever could. "He trusts you," Cole said finally, "and he doesn't trust easily." Leah's breath trembled. "Then he's kinder than people." Cole crouched near the fire, rubbing his palms together. "Arthur Hale," he said quietly, as if testing the name against memory. "I met him once. Old man runs a repair shop in town, doesn't talk much. Still keeps his son's badge on the counter." "He kept that?" Leah whispered. "After all these years?" "Grief has a way of freezing time," Cole said. "This town's full of people still living inside the moment they lost something." He glanced at her. "You too." Leah didn't answer. She sat very still, listening to the tickless silence of the broken clock. Later, when Emily fell asleep, Leah stood near the window. Outside, the forest glowed faintly with moonlight. "You said you stopped listening to orders," she murmured. "Why?" Cole didn't move. "There was a house fire. Family trapped inside. Dispatch told me to wait for backup. I did." His voice went flat. "Backup never came." Leah's hand tightened on the windowsill. "You lost someone?" "A boy," he said. 8 years old. He was still holding his mother's hand when they found him. I promised I'd never wait again." The words came out calm, but his eyes betrayed the kind of pain that never fades, only dulls into habit. Atlas rose, circling once before lying near Cole's boots. The firelight glimmered on the dog's gray muzzle. Leah sat back down, her gaze distant. "You think that makes you reckless?" "Maybe," Cole said, "but I'd rather be wrong for trying than right for nothing." His voice softened. "You should sleep. Morning's not far. And if the sheriff finds us, then he'll wish he hadn't." She smiled faintly, small, almost invisible. "You sound like someone who used to believe in happy endings." Cole looked into the flames. "I used to believe in second chances. Same thing, maybe." The cabin crackled around them, alive with warmth and ghosts. Above the mantel, the silent clock stared down, its wooden bird trapped in eternal stillness. Outside, the storm had eased to a whisper, and for the first time since the night began, Leah's heartbeat slowed. She glanced at Atlas. The dog's eyes were half closed, but he still kept one ear turned toward the door. Watching, waiting, loyal. Cole sat beside the fire until sleep claimed him. His hat pulled low over his eyes, the weight of his gun belt resting beside his chair. Leah, still awake, whispered to the dark, "Daniel, if you can hear me, I'm sorry." The wind answered softly through the cracks in the wood, like an old voice forgiving her. For that night, the cabin became more than shelter. It was a quiet place between guilt and redemption, between what was lost and what might still be saved. The fire crackled in the hearth, throwing long shadows that danced across the cabin walls. Outside, the wind had softened to a mournful hum, brushing against the window panes like the whisper of ghosts. Inside, Leah Moore sat close to the warmth, her hands trembling in her lap. The lamplight drew out the copper strands in her tangled hair, the exhaustion beneath her eyes, the sharpness of a woman who had seen too much and trusted too little. Cole Merritt sat opposite her, silent, elbows resting on his knees, watching the flames rather than her face. Atlas dozed by the door, his great body stretched out like a shadow, his ears twitching even in sleep. Leah's voice, when it finally came, was soft but steady. "You asked what happened," she said. Cole didn't move, but his eyes lifted slightly, waiting. "North Gene wasn't a rescue program," she began. "At least, not in the way they told people." Her fingers twisted together, as if still scrubbing invisible blood from them. "They said they were training canines for emergency service. Dogs that could find survivors faster, withstand trauma, think like soldiers. But that was only part of it. They were experimenting with neural stimulants, drugs that altered a dog's fear response. They believed obedience could be hardwired." Her lips trembled. "They used pain to teach loyalty." Cole's jaw tightened. "You were part of it?" "I was a veterinarian," Leah said quickly. "I was supposed to monitor health, recovery rates, make sure no animal suffered beyond protocol." She gave a hollow laugh. As if that meant anything. The first subject was a shepherd named Aries. Black coat, gold eyes. He'd been a rescue from a fire like he understood danger. They pushed him too far. The seizures started after the third injection. Her eyes shimmered. "He looked at me before he died, Cole, like he knew I was supposed to save him." The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. Cole leaned back, exhaling through his nose. "You tried to stop them." "Yes," Leah whispered. "I filed a report to the ethics board. A week later, they fired me. Then my car was run off the road outside of town. My house was broken into. Every file I'd copied disappeared. That's when I realized it wasn't just science. It was money. North Gene had government contracts for field testing. They were building loyalty not for rescue, but for control." She stopped, her voice breaking. "I ran." Atlas raised his head, eyes half open, watching her with the slow awareness of something that remembered. His gaze made her chest tighten. "He reminds me of him," she said. "Of Aries." Cole followed her eyes. "Atlas?" "Yes, the same way he moves, the same scar near the rib." She hesitated, then reached for her pocket. From within, she pulled a small metal tag, dull and scratched, stamped with the code K912. "That was the last batch I worked on before I escaped," she said. "One of the dogs went missing during transfer. They said it died in the explosion that killed Daniel Hale." Her voice fell to a whisper. "But if that's true, then how is he here?" Cole leaned forward. "You think Atlas is—" "No," she said quickly, though her eyes were wet. "It's impossible. But if it is him, then it means he survived. It means what we did to him didn't break him." She looked down, stroking the tag. "He didn't come back for revenge, Cole. He came back to protect." The door creaked in the wind. For a moment, the only sound was the fire. Cole stared at Atlas, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the faint line of a healed scar along his ribs. He remembered the day he found the dog, buried half alive in snow, fur torn, still guarding a dying pup beneath him. He thought it was instinct then. Now he wasn't sure. "You think they're still running these tests?" he asked. "Yes," Leah said. "They call it Project Renewal. The new lead is a man named Dr. Victor Hale. He was Daniel's supervisor, ruthless, brilliant. He used to joke that empathy was a design flaw." She shivered. If Price is still protecting them, it means the lab didn't die with the fire. Cole rubbed a hand across his face. "Price again," he muttered. "He's tied to this?" "North Gene funded his campaign when he ran for sheriff," Leah said. "He's their cover. As long as he's in charge, no one in Cedar Hollow will ever know what they've done. Cole's teeth clenched. So that's why he wants you dead. Leah nodded. I know too much, and if the files Daniel saved ever surface, they'll lose everything. Just then, a small sound stirred from the corner. A soft gasp. Sophie Lane stood in the doorway of the side room, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her cheeks flushed from sleep and the heat of the fire. The little girl looked smaller than before, almost fragile under the orange light. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to listen. Leah blinked, startled. It's all right. Sophie stepped forward, hesitating, then held out her closed fist. I found this in the snow earlier, near the bridge. She opened her hand. There, resting in her palm, was another tag, identical to the one Leah held, only newer, cleaner. K9 to 12 gleamed faintly in the firelight. Leah's breath caught. Cole took the tag from the girl and turned it over. The back was etched with a word, faint but readable. Atlas. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Leah's eyes filled with tears. It's him, she whispered. I thought I'd buried that dog in fire, but he walked out of hell to save me. Cole's throat tightened, though he said nothing. Atlas approached quietly, resting his head against Leah's leg. His eyes met hers. Deep, knowing, calm. She cupped his face in her trembling hands. You should hate me, she said softly. But you don't. The dog nuzzled closer, his breath warm against her wrist. Outside, the snow began again. Soft, steady, endless. Leah turned toward the window. You see it, don't you? She murmured. The way it falls, like it's washing something away. Cole followed her gaze, his voice low. Like it's giving you a clean slate. The fire dimmed, and the room sank into half-light. Cole stood, pulling on his coat. Get some rest. Tomorrow we move. We can't stay here. Leah nodded, but didn't look away from Atlas. You're risking your badge for me, she said. I already risked it, Cole replied. Now I'm just deciding what it's worth. He glanced toward Sophie, who had curled up near the hearth again, eyes drifting closed. For them, it's worth something. Leah smiled faintly, tears glinting in the firelight. Thank you, she whispered. But Cole didn't answer. He stepped outside, letting the cold night air hit his face. The forest was quiet, except for the distant cry of an owl. He looked back once, through the frosted window, Leah and the child huddled together, Atlas at their feet. For the first time in a long while, Cole felt something almost like peace. He didn't know what waited beyond dawn, but tonight, in that fragile calm, the weight of all their sins felt just a little lighter. The night came without stars. Snow fell thick and heavy over the pines, smothering sound and light alike. Inside the cabin, Leah was wrapping Emily in blankets while Sophie clutched the lantern, her small face pale beneath its glow. Cole Merritt stood by the window, rifle slung across his shoulder, eyes scanning the tree line beyond the frost. He could feel the change in the air, that tense stillness that always came before violence. Atlas prowled near the door, hackles raised, nostrils flaring. They found us, Cole said quietly. Leah's breath caught. How do you know? Because I used to be them. He glanced at her, the reflection of firelight cutting sharp across his jaw. And I know how Sheriff Price moves. He doesn't knock, he circles. Outside, somewhere deep in the forest, headlights flickered, faint, deliberate, too steady to be hunters or travelers. Cole moved quickly. We can't outrun them with 2 children, he said. If we split, they'll track the heat. Stay low, keep the lights off. Leah's hands trembled. You'll be killed. Maybe, he replied, checking the magazine on his rifle, but they'll have to go through me first. He turned to Sophie, who stared up at him with wide, frightened eyes. You did brave things, kid. But if I tell you to run, you run. Got it? Sophie nodded. Yes, sir. Cole gave her a small, grim smile. the kind only men who'd made peace with danger could manage. Then the silence broke. A flare hissed into the sky, red and violent, casting the snowfield in hellish light. The air erupted with shouts, boots crunching, metal clinking. "Cedar County Sheriff's Department," a voice bellowed through a loudspeaker. "Step outside with your hands visible." Cole peered through the window and saw them. 5 deputies fanning out across the clearing, faces masked beneath winter hoods, and behind them, the tall, unmistakable figure of Sheriff Dalton Price. His black parka gleamed under the flare's reflection. He was built like a fortress. Broad chest, thick neck, gray stubble across a face carved from arrogance. He carried a shotgun like a scepter. Price's voice was cold, calm, and deadly. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you, Merritt. Step away from the fugitive and hand over the drive." Cole opened the door, stepping into the blizzard, snow swirling around him. "She's not a fugitive," he shouted back. "She's a witness, and that drive you're talking about, I don't have it." "You think you're a hero now?" Price sneered, stepping closer. "You're a liability, always were. You don't follow orders, you bury them." Cole's knuckles tightened around the rifle. "Maybe that's why I'm still alive." The sheriff raised his weapon. "You won't be for long." Before he could fire, Atlas leapt through the open door with a low, feral growl. Snow exploded in a spray as the German Shepherd hit the ground running, a streak of muscle and fury. Gunfire cracked through the night. Leah screamed, pulling Sophie and Emily behind the stove. "Atlas!" Cole shouted, dropping to one knee and firing a warning shot into the air. The flare burst again overhead, painting the forest blood red. In the confusion, Price's deputies spread out, their flashlights cutting through smoke and snow. Atlas darted between shadows, his movements ghost-like. The training of a soldier fused with the instinct of something wild. He lunged, tackling one of the men into the drifts. The man's gun fired upward into nothing. Cole sprinted through the chaos, drawing fire away from the cabin. "Get the kids out the back," he yelled. Leah grabbed Sophie's hand, dragging her toward the broken back door, heart pounding in her throat. She hesitated, glancing once toward Cole, the man who had risked everything for strangers. Meanwhile, miles away, another light burned, this one softer, trembling in the workshop of Arthur Hale. The old clockmaker sat at his bench, surrounded by ticking gears and tools gleaming with age. His face, lined and weary, bore the grief of a man who had spent a lifetime arguing with ghosts. His hair was white, his hands steady but slow. When the radio crackled with news of a shootout near the northern ridge, Arthur's head lifted. He recognized the names, Merritt, Moore, and something cold settled in his gut. He reached for a small wooden box beneath the workbench. Inside lay an external drive, old and scuffed, labeled in faded ink, North Gene, archive copy, D. Hale. Arthur stared at it for a long time, the reflection of his lamp glinting off the metal. His son, Daniel, had died for trying to reveal what was on that drive. Arthur had buried it out of fear and shame. Now, hearing the sheriff's name again, he knew fear was a luxury he could no longer afford. He plugged it into an ancient computer, the screen flickering to life, lines of data crawling upward. Files opened, lab videos, experiments, financial records, proof of everything North Gene had done. And in the corner of the feed, Arthur saw it, the sheriff's signature on a logistics order, Dalton Price, distribution approval. "God forgive me," Arthur whispered. Then came the knock, heavy, deliberate, echoing through the shop. Arthur's breath hitched. He turned and the door burst open. Sheriff Price stepped in, gun lowered but eyes burning. "Evening, Arthur," he said smoothly. "You've been busy." Arthur's hand twitched toward the drive, but Price was faster. "You don't want to do that, old friend." The word friend dripped like poison. "You should have stayed quiet. You always were good at that." "Not anymore," Arthur said hoarsely. Price smiled, a thin, cruel line. He struck the oil lamp from the table. Flames spread instantly across the wood floor, licking the walls. "Then burn with your conscience," the sheriff growled, backing toward the door. Arthur coughed, smoke filling his lungs. He grabbed the drive, shoved it into a small metal case, and hurled it through the workshop window into the snow outside. The fire roared higher, consuming the clock faces, the walls, the ghosts. As he fell to his knees, he looked up at the ceiling, the pendulum of a half-melted bird clock swaying above him. "Daniel," he whispered, voice trembling, "I made it right." Outside, snowflakes met sparks, turning the air into a storm of light and ash. Morning came reluctantly to Cedar Hollow, a pale gray light spilling over the broken treetops and the smoke that still rose faintly from the distant ridge. The storm had passed, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any wind. Cole Merritt stood at the edge of the ravine where the bridge arched across the frozen river. His uniform was torn, his gloves singed, the faint scent of gunpowder still clinging to him. Atlas padded beside him, moving carefully, his paws pressing soft prints into the crusted snow. The German shepherd's fur was wet and clumped with frost, but his golden eyes were bright, alert, unyielding. Cole's breath turned white in the cold. Beneath the bridge, the ground was scarred by what had once been the cabin's debris. Fragments of timber, scorched tin, and a twisted metal safe buried halfway in ice. He crouched, scraping away the snow with his knife until the numbers on the rusted dial appeared. "This is it," he murmured. Leah stood a few feet away, holding Emily close beneath a thick blanket. Her face was paler than usual, but her eyes were alive now. Cautious, but no longer hopeless. Beside her, Sophie Lane clutched Atlas's collar, watching Cole with the mix of awe and fear reserved for children who had seen too much too soon. With a grunt, Cole pried open the safe's door. Inside were folders sealed in plastic, each stamped with the faded insignia of North Gene Laboratories. The edges were charred, but the contents looked intact. Pages upon pages of reports, signatures, shipment receipts. One of them bore Sheriff Dalton Price's name beside authorization codes. Cole exhaled slowly. "This is what they killed for." Leah took a step forward, her voice trembling. "These are Daniel's files. The missing data I thought burned with the lab." Cole nodded. "Then we make sure it doesn't vanish again." A sound came from behind, the crunch of boots on snow. Cole's hand instinctively went to his holster, but when he turned, it wasn't Price's men. It was an old man in a long wool coat, leaning on a cane, his white hair stirring in the wind. Arthur Hale looked like someone carved from the same wood as the town itself. Tall but slightly bent, his weathered face lined deep by time and loss. His blue-gray eyes, sharp and haunted, took in the scene. "So it's true," he rasped. "She's still alive." Leah froze. "Arthur." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Arthur reached into his coat and drew out a small metal box, the same one he had thrown through the flames the night before. The edges were blackened, but it was intact. "This belonged to my son," he said, voice trembling. "He died believing the truth would outlive him. I think he was right." He extended it toward Cole. "Take it." Cole accepted the box, feeling its weight like the judgment of a whole town. He looked at the old man. "You're lucky you made it out of there." Arthur gave a tired smile. Luck had nothing to do with it. Conscience did. His gaze shifted to Leah. "For years, I thought you killed Daniel, that your report set the fire that took him. I cursed your name every night. But last night, when I saw those files, I realized it wasn't you. It was silence. Mine. I let them lie, and I let him die for it." His eyes glistened, but his voice did not shake. "I won't make that mistake again." Leah's lips parted, but words wouldn't come. Emily stirred in her arms, whimpering softly, and Leah brushed the child's hair with a trembling hand. "He believed in you," Arthur said. "Said you were the only one at that place who still saw those animals as living things." Leah's eyes filled with tears. "And I failed them all." "No," Arthur said quietly. You survived. Now use that. Cole placed both drives, Leah's original and Arthur's copy, into a weatherproof case. Between these two, he said, we've got everything. The payroll, the experiments, the names. He glanced at Arthur. You realize what happens when this goes public. I do, Arthur replied. Price will fall, and North Gene will burn for real this time. From above, the rumble of an engine echoed through the valley. Cole looked up sharply, a black SUV crawling across the bridge, its tinted windows glinting in the dawn light. We're out of time, he muttered. They're coming back to finish what they started. Leah tightened her grip on Emily. Then what do we do? Cole straightened, sliding the case into his pack. We do what they never expected. We tell the world. Arthur's cane sank deep into the snow as he turned toward the riverbank. There's a ranger outpost downstream. Radio tower still working if the signal's strong enough. I can guide you. You'll come with us? Leah asked. Until my legs give out, Arthur said with a dry grin. And even then, I'll crawl. They moved quickly along the frozen path, Atlas leading ahead, his ears twitching at every sound. The sky was clearing, and the first rays of sunlight cut through the pine canopy, gold against the white. Leah walked close beside Cole, her voice low. You're risking everything for this. Not everything, he said, just what's left. Behind them, the sound of the SUV faded. Cole turned once, saw the bridge framed by the rising sun, the place where truth had been buried beneath ice and lies, now slowly thawing. Leah's voice carried over the wind. Cole? Yeah. When this is over, what will you do? He smiled faintly. Maybe stop running. As they reached the river bend, Sophie knelt beside Atlas, brushing the snow from his collar. You saved us, she whispered. The dog licked her glove, tail wagging slowly. No, Cole said gently, glancing down at the girl. You're the one who led me here, remember? You started this. Sophie looked up, smiling shyly. Then maybe we all saved each other. For a moment, everything stilled. The sunlight, the cold, even the river beneath the ice. Cole looked at the faces around him. A weary mother, 2 brave children, an old man redeemed, and a dog who had once survived fire. In their eyes he saw something stronger than truth. He saw hope. Spring crept gently into Cedar Hollow, like a whisper afraid to disturb what winter had buried. The river beneath Cedar Bridge finally thawed, carrying the broken fragments of ice away in slow silver ribbons. Birds had returned, their cries echoing across the valley. Where the world had once been silent and white, there was now movement, color, and the fragile hum of life rebuilding itself. In the heart of town, a small wooden sign swayed under the morning breeze. Hope, shelter, no soul left behind. Beneath it, the old veterinary clinic had been restored, its windows shining, the smell of fresh paint mixing with that of cedar and clean straw. Leah Moore stood by the entrance, a stethoscope around her neck, her brown hair tied loosely in a braid. The shadows that once darkened her eyes had softened, replaced by something steadier. Peace, perhaps, or the slow forgiveness that follows grief. She wore a simple flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, her hands scarred from years of work but steady as she checked the pulse of a rescued collie. Emily sat nearby on the porch steps, feeding treats to Atlas, who lay stretched in the sunlight, his fur glossy now, though a pale line of scar remained along his rib. A reminder of everything endured. His ears twitched lazily at every sound, but his gaze never strayed far from Leah and the girl. The bell above the door jingled, and Sophie Lane stepped out carrying a box of medicine. At 12 now, she'd grown taller, her hair longer, still tied with the faded blue ribbon Leah had given her the night they escaped. Her spirit hadn't changed. Still curious, still fierce in the way only those who've seen darkness young can be. That's the last of the shipment, she said proudly. Leah smiled. You're quicker than the delivery man. Sophie shrugged, smirking. He doesn't have Atlas helping. The dog gave a small huff as if in agreement, and Sophie knelt to scratch his neck. You've earned retirement, old boy. Just then, a slow crunch of footsteps came from the path. Arthur Hale appeared, walking with his cane, his heavy wool coat open, revealing a crisp white shirt tucked into suspenders. He looked older now, his back a little more stooped, his beard fully white, but his eyes had regained something they'd long lost: gentleness. He carried a small wrapped parcel under his arm. "You've built something beautiful here," he said, his voice gravelly but warm. Leah wiped her hands on her apron and smiled softly. "I had help." Arthur nodded toward Sophie. "And heart. You've all got more of that than the rest of this town combined." He took a seat on the porch bench, watching the light shift through the trees. "I brought something," he said, unwrapping the bundle. Inside was a small wooden bird, carved from pale pine, one wing broken clean through the middle. The wood was scorched on one side, a relic from a time when fire had nearly erased every memory that mattered. Arthur turned it over in his hands before placing it gently into Sophie's. "It used to hang in my son's room," he said. "Every morning he'd wind it and let it sing. I thought the silence after the fire was punishment. Now I think it was just waiting for the right hands." His gaze softened. "Keep it, child. Make it sing again." Sophie held it as though it might crumble. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "even if it's broken." Arthur smiled. "That's when it's the most beautiful, my dear. When something broken still tries to fly." Leah reached out, touching his arm. "Thank you, Arthur." He shook his head. "Don't thank me. You gave this old town its voice back." He looked toward the hills, where the wind carried the faint echo of church bells. Even the dead would rest easier now. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Cole Merritt arrived in his patrol truck. The paint was scratched, the engine coughed, but it still moved, much like the man himself. He stepped out, his uniform jacket slung over his shoulder, hair grown longer, a rough line of stubble softening his square jaw. The years had not worn him down, but rather carved him cleaner. A man tempered by storms, both literal and within. Atlas perked up immediately, tail thumping against the porch. "Hey, partner," Cole said, kneeling to ruffle the dog's ears. "Still keeping everyone in line." Leah came to the doorway, her lips curving into a smile. "You're late," she teased. "I got lost," Cole replied. "Didn't recognize the town without the snow." He handed her a sealed envelope stamped with the crest of the State Department of Justice. "They're reopening the North Jean investigation. Price's assets were seized last week. He'll spend the rest of his life answering for what he did." Leah took it quietly, her eyes glistening. "You did this?" "No," Cole said. "We did." He looked past her to Sophie and Arthur sitting by the fence, their laughter drifting like birdsong. "Guess hope really does survive the winter?" As dusk fell, they gathered on the porch. Sophie hung the little wooden bird from the beam, its broken wing swaying gently. When the wind caught it just right, it made a faint melodic creak, not a song, but close enough to one. Leah wrapped an arm around Emily, watching it move. Arthur leaned on his cane, smiling faintly. "It's singing," Sophie said softly. Cole looked up at it too, then at Leah, then at the horizon where the last light of day met the river. "No," he said. "That's the sound of the world remembering how to breathe again." The sky deepened into twilight. Fireflies began to stir among the tall grass, glowing like fallen stars. Inside, the sign over the doorway gleamed in the lantern's glow. Hope, shelter. Cole exhaled, long and slow, feeling the weight he'd carried through every storm finally lift. It wasn't the end of winter he was witnessing. It was something better, the quiet beginning of warmth. It's not that the snow has gone, he thought, glancing once more at the bird's trembling wing. It's that people have learned how to stay warm, When the snow finally stopped falling, what remained was not silence, but grace. In the warmth of that small shelter, hearts once broken learned how to love again. Maybe that, too, is a kind of miracle. Not the thunderous ones we read in Scripture, but the quiet ones that God plants in everyday lives. In a kind word, a rescued soul, or a hand that chooses mercy over judgment. Perhaps you, too, have walked through your own winter, waiting for light to return. If this story touched something in you, please share it. Let someone else remember that hope still breathes beneath the cold. Leave a comment to tell us your thoughts, and subscribe so you can join us for more stories of faith, love, and redemption. May God bless you and those you cherish, and may His miracles find their way to your heart.